Hi, today I will talk about the Euthyphro Dilemma. I've always enjoyed reading Plato. When my wife is shopping, I'll break out my ebook reader and dig into another dialogue. It is quite enjoyable watching that mind at work. One of my favorite platonic dialogues is called Euthyphro, and I have seen it come up in debates recently, and some call it the Euthyphro Dilemma. After thousands of years, it still has that much power. The setting of the dialogue is in front of the courthouse in Athens. Socrates is up on the charges of subverting the youth of the city, and Euthyphro is there to charge his own father with murder. The father had found out that one of his servants had committed a murder, and the father beat the guy up, had him bound, and tossed into a ditch, and sent off for counsel on how he should handle the matter. It then became academic because the guy in the ditch died. So Socrates tells Euthyphro that he must really understand what true piety is in order to do what he was doing. Euthyphro climbs up on his high horse and agrees completely. Socrates then, and I can't help but think that his next statement was dripping with sarcasm, told Euthyphro that he would immediately become the wise man's disciple, and he would quickly learn all about piety before his own trial came up, and it would help in his defense. I always chuckle when I get to that part, because here we have been for thousands of years studying the wisdom of Socrates, and he eagerly is falling at the feet of another to learn from him when the guy is clearly an egomaniac. The guy bites, however, which is what Socrates was after. Socrates takes Euthyphro on a merry ride through the topic, and it is truly delightful. Plato's philosophical system relied on the concept of forms, or ideals of things. There's the ideal dog. And a good dog, in his system, would be a dog that acted most dog-like, or would match closest to the ideal dog. And a bad dog would be one that acted the least dog-like. So, Socrates puts forward the assertion that anything that is pious must contain the quality of piety. The part of the action which aligns itself with the ideal of piety would be truly pious. The impious action would be the opposite of the pious ideal. He asserted that there was such a thing as piety itself, and he was looking for a definition of that quality. Euthyphro agreed that this was true, and so Socrates put it to him directly. What is piety, and what is impiety? This is where the fun begins. Euthyphro starts off by saying piety is what he himself is doing, prosecuting his own father. He cited the actions of Zeus, who bound his own father, Cronos, for devouring his own sons. And Cronos earlier had punished his own father, Uranus, for a similar reason. Clearly, what Euthyphro was doing was pious, for it only emulated the actions of the gods. Socrates then asked if Euthyphro really bought all those stories about the gods. The man said that he most certainly did, and even more things that were not common knowledge. This led Socrates to let Euthyphro know that he would have to wait to hear about those other wonderful things, because he wanted to get the answer to his original question, which remained unanswered. I can see why the powerful people of Athens hated Socrates. He was tenacious and would not accept half answers and nonsense as being valid, and he could be terribly sarcastic when somebody was saying stupid things. Socrates told the man, "Okay, let's assume your statement is correct, but surely there are other pious acts besides prosecuting your father." Euthyphro quickly agreed. Here Socrates cut to the chase. He basically said, "I didn't ask you for a couple of examples of pious acts. I asked you for what is the standard of piety, by which to measure actions to see if they are pious or not." Euthyphro said that he was happy to comply. He came up with his standard for piety. That which the gods love is pious, and that which they hate is impious. Socrates was much happier with that definition than the first one, but still he said they needed to take a closer look. First, he double-checked that he had it right, and that Euthyphro agreed that he did. Then Socrates pointed out that the gods had enmities with each other, they fought and disagreed with each other, and he went on to show that the arguments over absolutes like numbers and sizes can be put to rest by checking the math and measuring the sizes. Then there are no disagreements. Euthyphro agreed. But where men disagree is over justice, when one thing seems right to one and wrong to another. Euthyphro once again agreed. Socrates asserted that the gods also must fight over the same problems because of differing opinions on justice. The gods disagreed, therefore, on what is pious and impious. And he went on to say that he was surprised that his friend had failed, therefore, to answer the question, for the gods love and hate the same actions at the same time. Euthyphro dodged this problem by qualifying his definition of piety to only include those things that all the gods loved, and only what all the gods despised was impious. After going over the case of the father's prosecution farther, they came back to what exactly defines piety, and this led to what is called by some the Euthyphro Dilemma. Socrates said that if they agreed that what is loved by all the gods is pious and holy, do the gods love it because it is holy, or is it holy simply because they love it? The question confused Euthyphro, so Socrates gave him an example. If you are carrying something in your hand, it is in the state of being carried, just like a pious action is in the state of being pious. Now, Socrates asked, is this carried thing in the state of being carried because it has been picked up and in your hand, or is it picked up and in your hand because it is in the state of being carried? Another example he used was that of being in the state of being led. Are you in the state of being led because you are being led, or are you being led because you are in the state of being led? Euthyphro finally said he thought he understood what Socrates was getting at. Socrates then said, that which is loved is distinct from that which loves. Euthyphro agreed. Socrates asked directly, is something in the state of being carried because it is carried, or for some other reason? Euthyphro said, no, the state is caused by the action. That which is led is in that state because of the leading, and that which is seen is in that state because someone sees it. A thing is viewed or visible because it is seen and not the reverse. Any state of action or passion requires a previous action or passion which caused it. Euthyphro agreed. Socrates then went on to say that the state of being loved follows from the act of someone loving it and not the reverse. Again, Euthyphro agreed. So, asked Socrates, what about piety or holiness? Piety, by your definition, is that which the gods love. Do they love it because it is holy, or for some other reason? Euthyphro said, it was for that reason. It is loved because it is holy, not holy because it is loved. Euthyphro replied that was true. Socrates then pointed out that this leads to a problem with the definition that Euthyphro had already given him. Clearly, if the gods love something because it is holy already, then it is not their love that made it holy, and it is holy on its own right. The definition Euthyphro gave was of an attribute, but not of the essence of piety. For the object is pious on its own right, and therefore the love of the gods is demanded by the essence of holiness within the act. They then moved on to a side discussion brought on by the idea that part of piety is justice, and whether actions performed to attend to the gods in any way benefited the gods. But Socrates never turned loose of the original question. Over and over again, Euthyphro attempted to define piety and to answer Socrates' questions and objections. He accused Socrates of making their words and arguments move around when they should stand still, firmly upon solid ground. Socrates accused Euthyphro of being lazy for not putting forth his own wisdom in his answers. At one point, it came down to the question of what possible service man could render to the gods. Could men make the gods better by doing pious things? And they came full circle in the end to the point that what is holy or pious was what was dear to the gods. And Socrates pointed out that this failed to define the essence of holiness. And he said, then we must begin again. And then he asked, what is piety? I can picture the frustration on Euthyphro's face when this point was reached. He finally just gave up and he left with his tail between his legs, claiming that he just didn't have time right now to fully instruct Socrates on what the essence of piety is. Socrates cried out, alas, my companion, will you leave me in despair? But Euthyphro was gone. This dialogue is loaded up with interesting ideas, humor, and sarcasm. And it has left its mark on the ages. For example, there's a Christian apologist who sees a threat to his own position in this dialogue. Dr. William Lane Craig feels that he has come up with, or has found in another's writings, a solution to the Euthyphro Dilemma. He says that it is not a dichotomy that is presented in the discussion, but there are actually three possibilities. First is that something is inherently holy by some standard that is above and apart from any of the gods. Second, there is the action of the gods in loving something which makes that something holy. And finally, there is that which merely reflects the perfect character of God and is therefore holy as in the first case, but loved by the gods as in the second. So if something is being carried, it is not because it was picked up and taken by you and therefore enters into the state of being carried, but it is being carried because it just happens to physically line up with your hand and your hand just happened to be holding it. You did not enter into the state of being led because someone took you by the hand and started to lead you, but because you were otherwise moved into this situation and therefore entered this state. Some other mechanism has placed you into the state of being led, removing the requirement of beginning by being led. I failed to see this third alternative to being anything but a rejection of logic and reason. Even by this third alternative, it is admitted that the action is holy no matter how the state is defined, either before it is loved or becomes holy when it is loved. To assert that these two components of being holy and being loved simultaneously came into being would require that either something existed before God knew it existed, and it then simply happened to line up with God's character perfectly, and he therefore loved it as soon as it was detected. Or God created it as holy and then loved it because it matched up with his character. In point of fact, Dr. William Lane Craig's position is essentially the very same one that Euthyphro gave as that which the gods love. God loves anything that matches his character, and that thing is either holy on its own already, or it is made holy by God identifying its synchronous qualities with his own and therefore loving it. It tends to fall out the same. And of course, you could push this back a step and ask the question, if God's character is holy, what made the standard of holy by which you measure it? Is God's character holy because it matches the essence of holiness? Or is the essence of holiness that which matches God's character? Is piety defined by the character of God? Or is the character of God pious because it matches the essence of the self-existing standard of holiness? There is no third alternative. If Dr. William Lane Craig says that all holiness is what God deems as holy because it matches his character, or for any other reason, why would that be a dilemma for him? He believes that this universe is God's ball field. He owns all the balls, bats, gloves, and even the players. Why not say he also defines the rules of the game as it suits him? It is as if Plato was reaching across thousands of years to torment this poor man. All Socrates was asking for was a definition of what the essence of piety is. They killed him in his own time, but he is still shaking things up even today. Now that is the sign of a truly great mind. Thanks for listening, and if you like the discussion, please hit like. And if you haven't subscribed already, please do. I'll see you next time.